Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps, and they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they remained virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as firstfruits to God, and the Lamb.no lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless.
Revelation 14 verses 1-5 describes a vision of victory and purity centered around the Lamb, Jesus Christ, and the 144,000 faithful believers who stand with him. Here's a summary. The Lamb in Mount Zion, verse 1. John sees the Lamb standing on Mount Zion with 144,000 who bear his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads, symbolizing their belonging and loyalty to God. Heavenly song, verse 2-3. A powerful sound, like rushing waters and thunder, is heard, along with harpists playing. The 144,000 sing a new song before God's throne, the 4 living creatures, and the elders. Only the 144,000, redeemed from the earth, can learn this song. Purity and devotion, verse 4. These individuals are described as spiritually pure, not defiled by corruption, and wholly devoted to following the Lamb wherever he goes. They are described as firstfruits to God and the Lamb, indicating their special place as a holy offering. Blamelessness, verse 5. The 144,000 are described as truthful, with no lies in their mouths, and blameless in God's sight. This passage highlights themes of faithfulness, purity, and the ultimate triumph of God's people with Christ. Revelation 14 verse 5, emphasizing the aspects of purity. Verse 5 describes the 144,000 as blameless and truthful, with no lies found in their mouths. Their purity reflects their steadfastness in rejecting the mark of the beast, abstaining from pagan practices, and avoiding sexual immorality. This purity symbolizes their complete devotion to God, remaining untainted by the corrupt systems of the world.
In Revelation 14, the women mentioned metaphorically represent idolatry and paganism, akin to unfaithful lovers who lure hearts away from true devotion. Just as an unfaithful relationship breaches trust and commitment, idolatry and paganism draw the soul away from the covenant with God, enticing with false promises but leading to spiritual ruin. The 144,000's purity reflects their unwavering faithfulness to God, resisting such entanglements. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. He said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." A second angel followed and said, "Fallen! Fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries." In Revelation, the wine of her adulteries symbolizes the intoxicating allure of sinful, pagan practices and non-biblical values that lead nations astray. The wine represents spiritual corruption and moral compromise, while adulteries reflect unfaithfulness to God through idolatry and alignment with worldly systems that oppose His truth. The wine of her adulteries symbolizes not only the spiritual corruption of pagan practices and non-biblical values but also their physical allure, like wealth, indulgence, and worldly celebrations. The wine represents material enticements such as money, luxury, and revelry, which captivate and seduce nations, drawing them into moral and spiritual unfaithfulness to God. A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or on their hand, they, too, will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name. Revelation 12:17 Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. The commandments have not been abolished, they are to be upheld as part of the path to eternal life. This includes faith in and obedience to the Holy Son, Jesus Christ. 14:8 This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep His commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." Revelation 14 verse 13 conveys a message of hope and reward for those who remain faithful to God until death. The voice from heaven declares a blessing on those who die in the Lord, emphasizing that their faithfulness ensures eternal rest and peace. The phrase, "their deeds will follow them," highlights that their actions during life, specifically their steadfastness in rejecting pagan ways and faithfully keeping God's commandments, will have lasting significance. These deeds are not works of human merit but acts of devotion that reflect their allegiance to God, their resistance to worldly corruption, and their commitment to living in accordance with His will. Such faithfulness assures their eternal reward and rest in Him. I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel, who had charge of the fire, came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles for a distance of 1,600 stadia. This passage depicts a grim and powerful scene of judgment, where the focus is on the harvest of those who have rejected God and failed to keep His commandments. Unlike the earlier vision of the 144,000, which highlights the righteous, this harvest represents the gathering of the wicked for divine wrath. The harvest of judgment, verses 14 to 19. Two angels are involved in this symbolic harvest. The first uses a sickle to reap the earth, indicating the gathering of those who are spiritually unfaithful. The second gathers the grapes, which represent the wicked, into the winepress of God's wrath. The winepress and its meaning, verse 20. The grapes are trampled in a winepress outside the city, a symbolic act representing divine judgment and the utter destruction of the wicked. Blood flows from the press in a horrifying quantity, rising as high as a horse's bridle, about 4 to 5 feet, and spreading for 1,600 stadia, approximately 180 miles. This imagery emphasizes the totality of God's judgment and the inescapable fate of those who rejected Him. The outside the city detail may symbolize separation from God's presence and protection, as the city often represents a place of refuge for the righteous. The overwhelming flow of blood underscores the gravity of their rebellion and the completeness of their judgment. Revelation reflects the ease with which some individuals will accept the mark of the beast. Those who are already committed to systems contrary to God, like certain Catholic practices or Muslims who align with false teachings, will take the mark without hesitation, fully accepting and endorsing the worldly system. For them, this mark represents a natural progression of their existing beliefs and allegiances. However, those who are not fully committed, those who are still wavering, were not entirely given over to the worldly system, may take the mark on their right hand, symbolizing a less complete, but still willing, acceptance. This represents a practical decision, such as agreeing to buy and sell in a corrupted economy, while not fully embracing the system in its entirety. In contrast, The forehead mark symbolizes a full and complete submission to the beast, a sign of ultimate allegiance and acceptance of the system as the best and most dominant force. It signifies total devotion, with no room for hesitation or doubt.